So when you have been part of this aspect of, you have gone through the aspects of it. Have you faced any challenges, professionally speaking, in that term that you have been spending over here?
Not really.
Not really.
Frankly, we have such good relations with each of the countries. So I think, as I said, we have now strategic partnerships with each of the Gulf countries,
100%. Yeah.
GCC countries. So professionally, it's been a very enriching, very satisfying experience. Obviously, it was at different levels. I was third secretary learning the Arabic language in Damascus.
Okay.
I was a first secretary in Abu Dhabi doing commercial and economic work. And that time we also had the crisis where the Indian community from Kuwait had to be evacuated. That's in the Guinness Book of World Records, I think, is the largest single civilian evacuation. So
we have films based
absolutely. Bollywood has also made films, other films. Then again, almost 10 years ago, I was the Deputy Chief of Mission. So that was a different level as Minister Political and Economic in Saudi Arabia. And then finally as Ambassador. So yes, almost very broadly speaking, each posting was separated from the other by almost 8 or 10 years.
8 to 10 years.
So obviously different when you're at the junior most level and when you're at the senior level. So obviously there are different challenges, if you want to use your word. But I think we never had any issues here. We always found the local governments most responsive. And I think the community, always a great support. And particularly in times like evacuation and all, I think the community really
come
together and they have played a very major role. So that is my experience.
So you know what, along with every other subject that is being taught in the institute right now, you should also add storytelling or script writing, because I'm pretty sure if towards the end of this thing, if it is mandated, right, that all foreign officers who are retiring should be writing out a journal or a memoir of sorts. Is that an actual thing that happens?
Actually, there is a scheme, sometimes not implemented strictly, because when you retire, you're retiring or superannuating from the service. There are so many pressures, but we also have a tradition of oral history writing. It is done by an association in India called the AID, Association of Indian Diplomats, which is really an association of retired people, where very senior people have actually narrated their experiences, which have then been documented well after retirement, sometimes many years after retirement. So this project of oral history is also there. Again, not perhaps done to the level one would have
thought about
optimally liked, but I think it is there. And large number of my colleagues, particularly senior colleagues, have contributed to oral history in some of those narratives which they have.
Those have been transcribed.
Oral history is when you give and somebody transcribes it, and then it's part of there. It's part of then it becomes.
And
part
this is available for the public masses.
That is a good question. I need to check this out. I think some of these are published. They are. The AID documents are, I think, available. Now, how they are available, they used to bring out a journal, whether it's part of that or they have put it on the web. That part I'm not very clear. But yes, the point that you're making, and even serving officers have been asked or encouraged to write at the time of leaving. Again, that is very often not complied 100%, but people do leave behind their sort of, the main highlights or details of a particular incident or a crisis or what they handled.
The reason why I asked is because, I can only imagine from, say, you're just stepping out for going ahead and doing project A, whatever it is, and then you came back in that project A. What you have done in your position in itself, you might have made mistakes, you might have done things right. Both, if you're documenting it right like that, then that is such an immensely rich resource that the kids can look into. That they are not going to take it or they're not going to do anything with it. But just knowing about something like this exists.
Well, more than the public domain, I think certainly at the Foreign Service Institute or the SSIFS, the Sushma Swaraj Institute of Foreign Service, we use these case studies a lot. In fact, both serving and retired foreign service officers are regular. And I, during my term, of course, made it a point to get them regularly, both serving and those who had left the service, to come and narrate. And there, of course, it'll be the topic will be formal, but they would then bring their own experiences and their own insights to bear. And that, I think, is a great training tool which the FSI has. Not all of it can be in the public domain for obvious reasons, but the concept that you mentioned is very much being used.
Abridged, maybe?
Possibly, that could be done. But that today, a lot of my colleagues are also writing books post-retirement, writing articles in the media. And a lot of it comes out in that from time to time.
It definitely, in that opinion or that mindset or that perspective, if I may, that perspective is it is definitely going to be different, because something that people might see as object A might be perceived as 100 different things, like how you would talk about art or a certain situation in general. I have another question. This is slightly, say, in the current scenario right now.
Okay.
We talked about how Indian diaspora is spread all across the world, right? If that is the case, we also have a lot of considerations towards the Indian diaspora because of the remittances and the investments that come into play, and that is adding to the development of the nation. They might not be paying direct taxes or anything of that sort, but through this, there is a lot of help coming back, and there's something coming back to the nation. In this scenario right now, there is a very big issue, especially amongst the Malayali diaspora right now, of exorbitant air prices. So what kind of policies do you
mean
airfares between coming? It's not just in the Indian community. Indian diaspora in general almost always faces this situation, but in between there's a slight bit of relief. But naturally what we see is that it is almost always high. And what do you think would be that policy change that can be brought in that can, bring a little bit of a steady relief to this?
Well, I think you have to go back to the pandemic to this. For almost 3 years, people hardly traveled. And since now, fortunately, we are past the pandemic since last year. I think if I can put it like that, the country is literally on the move, both internally, and domestically, and abroad. I mean, the joke is that everybody seems to be wanting to move because they were sort of cooped up for last 3 years in their houses, could not travel, could not, for whatever reasons, tourism, relatives, could be any reason. Now, the first part, I don't see a link directly, but to answer your first part, the airfares are actually going up internally also in India, and naturally they're going also, as you mentioned, for international travel and from the Gulf and things like that. Now, I don't know whether there's the solution, the long-term solution for this is a regulatory one. It's a regulatory one as a policy issue. To my mind, it's a supply-demand issue. There is a sudden increase in demand, and obviously the supply needs to catch up. So the solution is to have more flights. I mean, from a very simple perspective, more flights. And I think the Indian airlines, as I understand, reading from the newspapers, have been really on a plane ordering spree lately. We keep seeing orders from this Airbus, Boeing, or wherever. So, and all the airlines. So I think, but yes, there is that time lag for that, for the supply to catch up with this demand. So that I think, because government, at least on the Indian government side, as I understand, they are really getting out of the business, as you know, of airlines. Even Air India, which was a public sector, has now been privatized, or they have disinvested in that. So I don't see a regulatory or a policy fix, as you put it, but I think the solution for this lies, and perhaps that's the positive way of looking at it, is that we need more flights, more seats, so that this increase in airfares that you're talking about goes down. To answer your second part of your question, the investment and remittance, yes, this is the economic commercial relationship is a very important part of the bilateral relationship between India and the GCC countries. Of course, oil is one part of it, but really the diaspora's contribution in terms of both investments and remittance is much appreciated. And I think what I read is the leadership of today, as you know, India is the fastest growing free market economy among the large countries. We've had growth rates of around in the ballpark of 7%. This is also the projection, which will be perhaps the highest in the world. And I think that provides a great opportunity for investment for the diaspora in India. And I think they are using those opportunities. As it is said, the diaspora should be part of the India growth story. And I'm very happy. I don't have the latest figures since I am no longer in the government, but I'm sure the both on the remittance side and on the trade and investment side, the diaspora's contribution is significant, and diaspora, particularly from the Gulf, is very significant. But I don't see a direct link with the airfares of this thing. But they have to be part, and I think the invitation is out there for them to be part of the India growth story.
The reason why I put those two things together is when I meant regulation. Do you think if it would be slightly bit more better if there is some kind of a cap? Yes, the prices will go up, but a cap, like how you would have rent control, something of that sort. Is that a natural?
I don't know in this day and age whether that is really effective. We are seeing in some other context sanctions were not working, caps which are not working. So I really don't know. And then it is not, I think, one government, because today airlines, business is
it's a different thing.
It's a multi-government. There are foreign airlines flying to India. There are Indian carriers. So as I said, I don't see that as a long-term or a sustainable solution. But I think the real solution lies in augmenting capacities, both in terms of flights, in seats, in airports, and more points and things. I'm sure UAE is India UAE airlinks are very strong. I'm sure. I don't, as I said, have the data of how many flights a week or how many seats that we have. But I think what I recall when I was in the service, that it's one of the busiest routes. But obviously, there's always scope for improvement there.
The reason why I had to come to that point, I'll take you away from there. Taking from your experience, what do you think the cultural organizations or cultural institutions over here, how can they work with the cultural institutions in India to build upon that particular identity? Or how can you think that it can be better for the youth that comes forward?
Oh, first is, of course, I'm aware and I'm conscious that we have a large number of Indian associations, cultural associations in the Gulf, everywhere in the world, but particularly in the Gulf, and that is commensurate with the size of the Indian diaspora. So these associations or cultural groups cater to the cultural needs of the Indian diaspora. The embassies and the consulates also have their own cultural centers, and they do their bit, whether it's for art, bringing in cultural troupes, or having classes which are related to some Indian languages, sometimes Indian musical instruments being taught, etc. So that the government is doing its part, as I understand. So I think, but then given the size, I think it is also for the cultural groups here, and that's, I think, already happening. A large number of artists and others are invited by the private cultural groups to cater to the requirements or needs. So I think the objective is the same, and they're both working towards that. Again, like everything else, perhaps more could be done. Sometimes it's a resource issue. More could be done. More exchanges, cultural exchanges could happen. more festivals of India or festivals of Gulf could be organized in each other's countries, and things. More artists could travel, and across the board. I mean, this is there.
That.
So, but I think what I have seen the in the Gulf countries during my tenures, the Indian cultural scene is very robust and very vibrant.
Right.
Just yesterday, we had a program organized for us of a cultural troupe with songs and which took us back many decades into the Bollywood, etc. So I think that's happening. Then I know there are so many dance schools here, dance groups,
100%.
classical dance, etc. is very popular. Used to be right from the days I was in Abu Dhabi. I have very fond memories of art. So the cultural scene is already very diverse and very deep and very, very rich. But yes, in all these areas, you can always do more.
Do more. Okay, so just to wind up the entire thing, for those students who are looking forward to the Indian Foreign Service, I have heard, like, usually it would be considered as a legacy kind of a situation, but I've also heard the side where the students themselves are the ones who are in conflict. They want to get into this, but their parents would not necessarily allow this to happen. What do you think?
Well, first, I would say, not because I'm from the Foreign Service, but I would say that it's a wonderful service. And if I had a choice again, I would unhesitatingly join the Foreign Service. So it is a service that I would very strongly recommend for whoever has the interest. Having said that, I don't think there are any shortcuts. The competition is getting tougher. And it's always been heavy, but it's getting tougher by the day. I think the last data showed that almost for about 1,000 positions across all services. Foreign service would only be about 30 or so out of that. But total civil services and examination of 1,000 positions, there were more than 10 lakhs or more than a million students.
So there are people, this is still happening.
Of course, they're there, so they're competing. So one, competition is high, but the way to tackle that is first hard work. As they say, 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. And with some luck. I always believe that many of us got lucky. So with luck, people should be able to make it. So yes, there are certain skills developed, the communication skills, the team working skills, and all those will come in handy, especially for the examination, the writing skills, for the interview, the speaking skills. But that's all part of the preparation. So yes, very strongly recommend those among the diaspora who are interested in taking the civil service should I would encourage them to pursue this line.
Thank you so much. Yes, so that is a good takeaway right there. And so I can ask enough and more questions because you seem like a person who has a lot of depth. As I mentioned, I think this should be taken up. The memoir thing. Would you be planning on writing memoir though?
Thank you. Maybe I'm now in my second or third inning in the university, having done 2 stints in the government. First 36 years in active diplomacy, then in the Sushma Swaraj Institute, now with an institute with a private university as teaching. Maybe in my 4th or 5th stint, why not? Thank you for your suggestion. Thank you.
I'm definitely looking forward to it. This was such an experience that I don't think that I would be getting in a usual scenario. So thank you so much for being here.
Listening is a virtue.